We had several remarks and thoughts about how to scale and the importance of, relative importance of being present in the US. I think Gro just mentioned that it's no longer seen as an iron law that you have to rebase your company in the US in order to scale. You can stay Nordic and establish presence here at the same time. Our next panel is, I mean, they're actually all examples of that to various degrees. And they've all made the decision to come here in order to grow their business and scale it in the US and scale it globally. Title of the panel is Coming to America. Those of you who are old enough, and maybe one or two other than me, will remember a film with that title from the 80s. Let's see if we have any experiences of that nature. That's going to be described here. To moderate the panel, I'm very pleased to have Katrine Jonsson, who is the only, as far as I know, general consul or consul general in Silicon Valley. So the Danes there have done something really smart and really extended their corps diplomatique into the lion's den. So with that, Katrine, take it away.
Thank you very much. And welcome to this panel. I know that there was a bit of talk about the same topic in the last panel, so we'll try and angle it somewhat differently here. But as Bjørn mentioned, coming to America, for those of you who are not in denial of their age and remember the film, it was about Eddie Murphy looking for true love. We're not here to talk about true love, although I think the topic may be for some just as important. But please come on to stage, my panelists. I think they're down there. Hello, Petra, Matthias, will you come up and join me, please? we're on. Give them a hand. But I will chat in the meantime as they get seated. Oh, some are fast. As Bjørn said, I'm a general consul and also head of the Danish Innovation Center in Silicon Valley. And as such, yes, I believe we are the only diplomatic representation based in Palo Alto. But we're of course there because we hope to be able to assist entrepreneurs scale by plugging them into the networks and the knowledge hubs and the venture capital there. But actually, in trying to prepare for this panel, I was trying to research on some data. Because what is the volumes of entrepreneurs coming to America, and what is the impact? What are the pros and cons? What are their experiences? We all know the anecdotal, sometimes mythical evidence of the Skypes and the Spotifys that have, of course, contributed to putting the Nordics on the global map in terms of being an entrepreneurship and innovation hub. But that's, of course, only part of the picture. Aggregate data for the Nordics are not that easy to come by, but what I did find was that it does corroborate the commonly held belief that a lot come to America for the capital. Of the exits via acquisitions over the last 5 years of the Nordic ICT companies, more than 40% was completed in the US. And dual companies, actually, they managed to acquire 30% on average more capital than the ones that are domestically focused. But enough of that. We have here a very interesting panel that will give their perspectives, unique perspectives and personal experiences of what they have done and what they've experienced on their way to America and over here. And I'm hoping it will both be good lessons learned for entrepreneurs, but also for policymakers and public servants such as myself, who are trying to design programs that will support entrepreneurs and create maximum impact, both for the entrepreneurs but also the countries we represent. But allow me to introduce, I think it will be ladies first, Petra Hilleberg of Hilleberg the Tent Maker, born in northern Sweden, where her parents, I think 45 years ago, started the notorious tent maker company. I think Petra actually already at the age of 12 had a vision to expand into the US and hastily implemented that only days after graduation, and is now hugely successful and president and CEO of Hilleberg Group. We have Matthias Bjørkholm, who is a clip art on steroids I also really like the mission that I think you present yourself on LinkedIn, that you have a mission to save the world from boring docs and presentations. I really love that. I don't know who wouldn't want to be part of that, to be honest. But Mattia is founder and co-CEO of Picket, who's also located here. Tor Ove Henriksen, next to him, founder and CEO of Skoola, who after working closely with Microsoft as an expert and business leader for more than 20 years, got fed up with there being no IT solutions for teachers and students, and therefore started to make his own company. Also looking forward to hearing from you. We have Arne Tonning, who is a partner at Alliance Venture, leading early-stage venture capital firm in Norway, and investor in residence at the Nordic Innovation House, also in Silicon Valley, where he also works, among other things, with entrepreneurs and advising them on coming to America. Last but certainly not least, Thomas Ryd, co-founder and CEO of Northern Tech, spending his days trying to steer the company towards its mission to secure the world's connected devices. Also previously an incubator manager, investment manager, has been in Menlo Park, also Silicon Valley, for the last 7 years. So welcome to all of you. And I've asked the panel to give their unique insights for 4 to 5 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards, hopefully also with good questions from the floor. But Matthias, will you start?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Matthias. I'm the CEO, I'm the founder of Picket. And as you said, we are replacing clip art in PowerPoint. And I think that you guys are probably aware of PowerPoint. You've tried it a couple of times and you realize that you're spending a lot of time on PowerPoint producing the slides. So our notion started a couple of years ago when we actually saw that 500 million photos were uploaded every day to different social media channels. 500 million photos every day. Today that number is 3 billion photos every day. And I bet that we have about, I don't know, 90% of those are actually selfies. So, here I am today. I'm sitting on the chair, normally just wander around on the stage, or I actually go on my skateboard, just so people can remember me. So I'm not producing skateboards. The skateboard here just so you can remember me. Okay, so what's the story about Picket? 500 million photos 5 years ago. We realized that there's a great opportunity for us if we can actually work together with the PowerPoint team and with Microsoft, because they had 1.2 billion Office users out there. And our notion is that if we can actually help these guys to get legally cleared photos presented in the right way at the right time and make sure that everything is legally clear, then we probably could have a great time together with Microsoft. And working with Microsoft, that's a big dog. 120,000 people. I think together with all the vendors and all the business partners and everything they have in the organization, they have about 190,000 people, but 120,000 people, that's a big dog for a small company in Sweden. So I started to travel. I started to walk the hallways for the first time, 2014, in Redmond. I realized that I'm meeting a lot of good people here, and we actually are solving a problem for Microsoft, and we're also solving a problem for the end user. So we started to work together, and the first time, 2014, after a couple of days, I got a phone call back from the guys that I was talking to, and they said that, hey, we really like the idea, but you know what, could we have a few more discussions about this? And I was like, yeah, sure. We could probably try to Skype. We could probably try, phone call, whatever it is. But just after a couple of weeks, I realized that every time we were having a phone call or a Skype call, something like that, it didn't really work. I had to be here. So 2015, or 2014, 2015, in 12 months, I had 27 transatlantic flights. So that is actually beating very Gary, I think. You're traveling a lot, but 27 transatlantic flights. Every time anyone asked me could we have a meeting, I was like, yeah, I'm there tomorrow. And there are a lot of fun stories I can tell you afterwards when I was stopped in Amsterdam for basically being a terrorist because we had to, you know, traveling back and forth all the time. That was a big hassle. So I decided or we decided, because I have a wife and 3 kids, so we decided to do a field trip to see if Seattle could actually be something. And yeah, we are here 3 years later. And the reason why we're here is that we work super close with Microsoft, that is also a part of Nordic company since February last year. And yeah, I need to spend so much time here. That's why we're here.
So it's actually not, I'm sorry if you allow me a question already, it's not because of the venture capital or access?
No, it's not basically, it's not because of the venture capital. We didn't have that, I wouldn't say problem, but for us it was more hooking up with Microsoft as a partner. That was the most important thing.
Thanks. Or, would you like?
Yeah, hi, my name is Thor. I'm the founder of Schooler. Hope you can hear me good. We are a small company from Moss in Norway, just outside Oslo. We are kind of trying to change the way schools work today by preparing the students to actually work in an environment they will meet when they go out and be prepared for life in real life. So the management platform that we have actually give teachers and students the possibility to actually work inside of Office 365 100%, and then we use the workflow that one of the greatest companies with the best collaboration platform actually delivers, and we built the tools on top of that to make it extremely pedagogical and user-friendly for teachers. So they don't have to go out of their existing environment, so that's kind of the shorty for us. We moved over with family and dog in the whole shebang in August, and I'm kind of a newbie here. Everyone has been here longer than me. And we did it because of many reasons, but we work really close with Microsoft. We're the only company that's 100% integrated as a learning management platform in Office 365 and Azure. So it's really important to keep kind of the dialogue going, and it's really difficult on Skype and airplanes, and yeah, so you need to kind of meet the people, and then the next step for us would kind of be doing the proof of concept here, kind of 50 countries in one country, to make sure that every state works differently. This is the largest and most mature technology country for schools. It's not the biggest one regarding schools, but it's the biggest one regarding technology in schools. So we moved over because kind of getting the interaction with Microsoft daily, instead of kind of doing the airplane and phone and say, hey, we can meet up in a few days, and then the 9 hours time difference makes it really difficult for a small company to grow fast in a country. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is kind of the venture capital part of it. We have some funding from Norway, a great company called Viking Venture that did kind of the A round in Norway to make sure that we have money to establish and set kind of footprint to start with here in the States. But again, the valuation and how kind of the venture companies look at companies here, instead of how it is in Norway, it kind of doubles or triples kind of the amount that you get. So when we were kind of raising $3 million, and I talked to a few of the American investors, like, that's a small amount, so you can come and talk to us when you need like 10. So for us, when we are here now, it's kind of both the trip. We couldn't do it without a venture capital from Norway that started the A round, but again, making sure that when we have the proof of concept and seeing what we're going to do here, we need to kind of do that from an American venture perspective.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm the low-tech part of the panel. So like we said, my parents started a company 45 years ago making backpacking and mountaineering tents. So I grew up in that business with my parents, and when my dad came back from a business trip to the U.S., I was about 12, and I told my dad that I was going to sell tents in the U.S. when I grew up. So he said, "Yeah, of course you are." Then I ended up going to school here in Seattle, and I went to Seattle University and graduated in 2000. And then, due to a little misunderstanding or a Swedish glitch, I had planned on taking the summer kind of slowly setting up the business, getting inventory over, finding office space and all that. So I placed an ad in an August issue of a magazine, which in Sweden, August issue comes out in August. Here in the US, it turns out that an August issue is a July-August that comes out in June. So all of a sudden, as I was doing my final spring quarter of school, I realized that this ad was going to come out basically the day after I graduated. So all of a sudden I had to go really, really fast and move very quickly, running with real estate agents and lawyers and accountants. And this was in 2000, right before the high-tech bubble burst. So finding an office space, and I decided I wanted to live in Redmond. So I wanted to have the office in Redmond. And finding an office space in there at that time was very difficult. So they ended up finding a storage unit. It was about 1,000 square foot storage unit in this office park underneath info space with no running water. So if I had to go to the bathroom, I had to put a sign on the door to say, "We'll be right back," and run upstairs. But so I graduated on June 12th, and then my first tent I packed up, which took a really long time, and sent out on June 14th. So it was a really quick way to start a business. I had no time to think about what I was doing or what I was doing wrong or what I should be doing. And I think that was actually to my benefit, that I never had time to sit back and question myself or think about how I should be doing things or what I should be thinking or how I should be planning things, because I just did not have time. So that was how I started. And then I worked by myself for about 2 years until I hired my first employee. And so we had obviously I had financing from Sweden, since we started the Swedish branch of or the US branch of the Swedish office. And we'd set a plan to hopefully break even after 5 years. So I had someone told me the other day that I was under-promised and, well, he said under-delivered, Birger, but we kind of over-delivered in that, obviously, and made it happen a lot faster. But there was never a pressure of moving really fast or having to expand really quickly. And that's something that's always been true in our business, that we've stuck with making very high-end backpacking and mountaineering tents for 45 years. And there's always a pressure to start doing other things. Going to backpacks, make sleeping bags, anything. And we've been always very focused on doing what we know best and staying with that concept. And that's still how we work it. So now we have 12 people in my office, and I'm in charge of the office here in Sweden. And then we have a factory in Estonia, which I know was mentioned earlier. It's not always good when a company or a country wants to focus only on technology when you have a factory in that country. That actually is a whole other side of a conversation that makes it difficult for those of us who are still producing in Europe. That the technology side of things can be make things a little bit difficult. But that's basically how our office is set up now. So in our US office, we focus on marketing. We do all sales outside of Europe. All the social marketing and video is done in our US office. And then in Sweden, we do the product development and material development. And then the factory in Estonia. So that's how we are set up.
Great. Thanks, Peter. Arne?
Yeah, hi. So again, I'm Arne Tonning, and I'm partner at Lions Venture, which is a Norwegian venture capital firm. I'll share my perspective on why I'm here. I'll start by explaining what we do. So we're an early stage venture fund investing primarily in Norwegian companies, but not entirely exclusively. We have 22 companies in portfolio now. 17 of them are Norwegian and 5 are non-Norwegian. We invest in early stage and sort of cover the full digital tech value chain. But sort of the focus around software and software-based services. We have 5 partners, 4 in Oslo, me on the West Coast in Silicon Valley, and we invest primarily in B2B cases. So I guess the key question is, why is a Norwegian VC investing primarily in Norway on the west coast of the US? Now that doesn't seem entirely reasonable. Well, obviously you can look at this from a few different perspectives. One is that our industry is becoming more global. Second, it has to do with value creation. And third, it has to do with being where our customers are. So as a VC, we serve the startup community, we serve our portfolio, and we serve our investors, our LPs. And so one trend is that we see that Nordic and Norwegian startups try their luck in a foreign market early, and oftentimes in Silicon Valley. So working out of Nordic Innovation House is actually a very good place to get a different perspective on our deal flow, see what the companies are up to, see what the response they get in the market, and therefore getting a different perspective on deal flow and making good decisions as to what to invest in. And secondly, it's a very good place to benchmark what we see in our home market compared to the peer group that's much bigger, and what's going on and what makes sense in that context. So being present on the US West Coast is clearly both about deal flow and making good investment decisions. Secondly, and probably more importantly, company value is more or less directly correlated to company success. And big time success is driven by high growth and large opportunity. And if you're a company in a small market, you're capped essentially by that market. So access to a larger market is essentially a frame for whatever success you can have. So accessing a bigger market is just a very, very fundamental driver of succeeding in that market. Now, so given that we invest in the sort of core tech ecosystem, for those companies that belong to that subpopulation of our portfolio, Silicon Valley is just probably the most important market, and that's where the most interesting customers and partners are. So getting access to that market is just super important to build value. And we see that probably the most critical step of that is the initial bridge and making that work so you have a platform or a beachhead to grow off. And so we think that that's part of the process where you can play the biggest difference and help take out risk and help the companies succeed. So that's probably the most important part of it. That said, we sort of like investing in companies that we call pre-bridged, i.e. they have people on the ground, the team works on both sides of the ocean, and sort of there's traction and relationships established. So Northern Tech here is a perfect example of that. Finally, I'd say that as VCs, we make money when we realize investments and exit companies at a good value. And I understand, based on the earlier discussion, that this is a sort of contentious issue. When is the right time to realize? In reality, it's different from different companies. And I think in our portfolio 22, we probably have 5 companies we think are IPO candidates. But in reality, statistically, what you live off is M&A. And if M&A is the right path, it's about timing, getting the maximum value, and getting the maximum value is having the best buyers around the table. Back to where is the ecosystem where the best buyers are. And these guys don't buy companies they've never heard of before or that are remote. They buy companies they work with who are successful and have proof of value to them, and hopefully big value by them that time. And so we see this continuum of making good investment decisions, helping bridge, helping grow, and then realizing value. And so the presence here is very much along that continuum. So finally, I'd say, what I do every day, I do my own investments as a partner of a venture capital firm, but I also get to work across the portfolio, helping on the ground for those who are have some activity in the US, in whatever stage they are. And the idea is to help take out risk and sort of find a shorter path to building the company and growing it faster. So that's sort of the logic from my perspective.
Hey, my name is Thomas. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Nordic. So we are a system management company. We develop software for connected devices. What it means is that as the world is becoming more digitized, everything is going to be smart. Smart means software normally, and software by default are vulnerable. And most of the connected devices today, they don't have a way to keep themselves updated. So we have an open source project called Mender that is seeking to address all the companies that are developing these smart products and provide them with an easy way to keep them updated and secure. So that's the product. And I will share a little bit about my experience coming here. So I moved here in 2011. At that time, we didn't have many customers. We had a few customers. But the main idea to come here was that in the US there's a big market potential, and we realized the best way to realize that potential is to be here in the market. So in order to share some of my experience, from a practical point of view, things just take a long time. One thing is to be invited by Microsoft or being an employee in a big company like Google. They have everything in place for you. The visa is there, a place to live is there. But coming here as the first person, you have to do everything from scratch. That's non-trivial. It took way a longer time than what we had in our plans. The visa process is a big pain. Although once you get it, in our case, we have an investor visa called E2, so getting the second employee, the third employee is quite easy compared to getting the first one, but getting the first one is very difficult, time-consuming, costs a lot of money, and this is in 2011. God knows what it's like today. And then you have to deal with all the banking, the phenomenon called DMV here, if you like to drive your own car. It just takes a long, long time. That was a key takeaway for other entrepreneurs coming here, that please plan for, it will take longer than what you think. Then when it comes to another learning in terms of timing, is that what happened to us was we got a round of venture funding back in Norway at the time. And with venture funding, you need to move fast. That's the point. You need to put this money into action as quickly as possible. So I was tasked moving over to the West Coast and set up a team with this venture money that is burning, so you need to move fast. That's the whole idea. But with an investor back in Norway, with close to zero network here on the West Coast, myself, I've almost barely been in the US before moving here, so I had zero network. And I'm supposed to create this team in no time. That's quite challenging. So that's another learning point is, if you move here with VC money from the Nordic region and you don't have a network, lower your expectations as to how long it will take. Or if you want to do it very fast, be aware that it's very challenging and very risky, because the first people you bring on board are often the most critical ones. So unless you have a network, that can be quite challenging. So that was one key takeaway. Another key takeaway is, if I'm going to move here again, or if I were to redo, I would probably, so the reason we did West Coast was, at the time we were looking for, okay, so where are our partners based? Like, these are our top 10 partners, and 8 of them were on the West Coast. That's why we decided to move to the West Coast, basically. In addition to the nice weather and a couple of other things, but that was the main thing. But then there's something called distance, and 9 hours time difference between the West Coast and Oslo is a big pain. So if I'm going to do this again, I would probably move to the East Coast, because if you go to the East Coast, it's 6 hours, and that makes a big, big difference. Right now, we have to work very early or very late, or the guys in Norway have to do very early or very late in order to meet each other. So that's another big challenge moving to the US, and especially to the West Coast, due to the time difference. Having said that, the biggest benefit of going here is the market. It's a very welcoming society. I've been living in Switzerland, I've been living in England before. This is by far the easiest society to get into from day one. They welcome you, very opportunistic, very friendly, so getting meetings, meeting potential partners is very easy, I would say, in this market compared to other markets. So the underlying assumption that you should be here in order to get these partnerships and being close to the market turn out to be true. But the disadvantages, if you are mindful and aware of them, then I think what we have done is the right thing. And also what we do is like, I think Guru was saying the trend that, you do the product development stuff back in the Nordic region and do the sales marketing in the US. We are an example of that. So we have all our engineers in Norway, we have some in Poland, and then most of the sales and marketing takes place here.
Sorry, Anna, you look like you had a comment to something that Thomas said? No?
No.
Okay. Great, thanks a lot. Now, it's quite striking to hear that you're all zooming in on practical challenges and also on, well, it's the market that drives you here, not the venture capital as such. And of course, we come from very small markets and the US is huge. The EU, had it had a digital single market, for example, would that have been an alternative for you? I mean, I'm just thinking, we have markets close by that are quite attractive as well.
So I think Europe as a whole is a big market, but go to France, you need to speak French. Go to Germany, you need to speak German. Here, you can speak English and you have the whole market. That's a big difference. Here is more or less homogeneous kind of environment, culture, language. Whereas in Europe, it's very dispersed.
Yeah, and of course the spending for us as a schooler, the school spends much more money on technology here, and even if Europe is a bigger market by population, this is the most mature market for digitalizing education. So that's why kind of Europe has to wait, and the language barrier stuff, of course, one part of it.
And I think that from a business perspective, I think that the US market is actually easier to work on than the European markets. There are faster decisions. People are more used to some rational decisions. And in our case, we were actually kind of like following the usage that we saw. And we saw that we had about 65% of the traffic that was coming from the US. And together with the relationship together with Microsoft, it actually took us to be the world's largest or the most downloaded app in the Microsoft ecosystem. And still, 65-70% of the traffic is still in the US. So easier to do business here, I think.
I agree with that. We obviously have a big business in Europe as well, but it's much easier technically to work here. We have one price list. In Europe, creating the price list, all the different markets, different currencies, and currency valuations, and also different rules on what you can and can't do as a retailer or a manufacturer is much harder in Europe compared to here. So a lot of things are easier for us also here.
Can I ask you, there's so much talk about the mindset in the Nordic countries being different than in America. Right, did you have any, did you make any fatal flaws, any mistakes, any failed fasts in terms of being culturally different? And is there any advice you'd like to give to fellow entrepreneurs in that regard?
Yeah, I can start. We're very practical in Scandinavia, in the Nordic countries, so short emails. Sometimes when an email comes back from one of the partners or someone we work with an answer, we normally don't reply in the Nordic countries. That's kind of a whole different story here. Always, when there's a conclusion of an email, you still have to answer. Kind of one of something I've learned fast. So that's and the friendliness in Norway when you're kind of walking around talking to partners or school leaders, it's difficult to get the discussion going. Here we feel more welcome. Also when you go into an elevator, someone say hi and talk to you. Yeah, in Norway there's like everyone in the phone trying not to talk to you. It's a big cultural difference, and it's also kind of here we moved into a nice area in Kirkland in August last year. It's a dead end. It's a dead end street. So, and everyone the first day came to us on the door and say, "Hey, come to barbecue tomorrow. boat trip on Sunday. In Norway, kind of, you can live in a street for a whole life, and you might know the closest neighbor. So it's a lot of different things. That also comes to business. You have to shake off kind of the Scandinavian part of you and be more outgoing. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that the US way of also presenting stuff is something that we really should learn from in the Nordic countries. One of the things is, the first times I was actually here, it was like, hello, my name is Matthias, I come from a small country in the Nordics that's called Sweden. We are having a very small team here right now trying to, we're trying to develop this software. And that is not how people in the US are telling the story. Hey guys, we're the fucking most downloaded software in the Microsoft history. That is picking right now. That is something we should learn from. On the other side, we also know that there's a lot of good coffee drinkers out there. So the first time when I started to do business with people, it was like, wow, we just love Pickett, it's fantastic. And I was like coming back the other day and was like, okay, let's close the deal. And they were like, we have another meeting right now, so if you just wait in the reception or maybe come back in 6 months or something like that. So I thought the deal was ready, but they're really good coffee drinkers. So you have to be aware of when you can do the deal or not. 2 takeaways.
Great example. Any others?
I was going to say the same thing, that not being afraid of saying that you're good at something, because that's the same thing, or that you're doing well. It's exactly the same thing. We were at a trade show, and my dad was there, and people would ask how we're doing. And he'd be like, oh, so. And I'm like, finally, like, Dad, you got to stop. These people don't want to hear it. You need to say we're doing really, really well, add up a couple of numbers, double it ideally, and say that we're doing really well. And he's like, okay. And same thing, saying that what we do is the best that you can have. That's something that's very hard for most Scandinavians, I think. And so for our catalog, saying that we have an American who writes the catalog, and it took him years to get information out of that. So after 10 years, he's like, are you actually saying that you actually made this thing? You're the first person who ever came up with it? He's like, yeah. Like, why have you not said it to me? So constantly, he's just pulling information out of my dad for 20 years. And he finally, still every day, keeps getting new snippets of, yeah, oh yeah, we did that. And it's very frustrating for him as an American to try to write PR stuff or good things about us when it's just so hard to get the information.
Yeah, so I fully agree that we Nordic can learn from the US in terms of selling our proposition, selling ourselves, and the whole ambition and confidence side of it. The flip side to that is that one of the hardest things when you say you have a running company back home, you're now establishing over here. The first hire or the second hire, the first people on the ground here, that's not part of your original team. Well, one thing is that you should have one of the original team bearing the culture and sort of building a bridge. But the second is the hiring, and when everybody else is selling themselves like Americans, having that bullshit filter. Because when you interview those people, they all sound fantastic. And this is your biggest risk, because if you're buying the bullshit, you're in trouble. And I think that's possibly the biggest risk you have when you establish over here, getting those first few resources wrong.
Yeah, so I think it's absolutely correct. We build things nicely in the Nordic region, but we do not know how to sell it. And part of it, I think it starts at a very young age. So I have kids, several of them, 3. And already in school, in kindergarten and first grade, people start to learn to present themselves, to start selling. Now, I can't remember the first time I was presenting something in front of the class back in Norway. I was probably very old. I don't even remember it, but my kids, almost every week, they stand in front of the class or in front of the school presenting something. And they become amazing salespersons because of this skill. So I think it starts from very early on that people know how to present themselves in the best way possible. And for a guy like me, stiff guy coming from Norway, it's not in my DNA to do it. And I remember our first sales guy that we had in the US, he was a top-notch enterprise sales guy. And I couldn't stand the guy. And we were in this meeting, like, what the fuck did he just say? We can't do that. We can't do that. And he was just bullshitting and making the customer smile. And, you know, we closed $1 million deal, and I was like, how are we going to solve this? Deliver. We managed to deliver, but the way he sold our first big deal, no one in Norway could ever do it in that way. So my recommendation would be, depending on how aggressive you would like to be, but unless you have it in your DNA, which I don't think many Scandinavian people have, finding someone on the US side that you can live with would be a first step.
I have plenty more questions, but are there any questions from the floor? Anyone? Yes?
I have a question. We haven't talked much about management, we can talk about marketing and stuff. So there is a difference of management style in Norway, for example. Are you allowed to run your divisions here, sort of like the American way, where they give you enough rope to hang yourself if you make a mistake? Or are most of your decisions have to go back to the executive board or whatever in Norway? So how does that work with your experience?
In my company, so I run it here normally as you do here in the States, but yeah, it's kind of a big difference. The more in Norway, you have to treat your employees really different. They have bigger security nets, but the biggest decisions needs to be made by the board. But normally we try to adapt how the management will be here, because you have to make sure that the people you hire and employ here works, and they don't work the Scandinavian style. So for our company, it's kind of an easy way.
So one of the things that are great back home is empowerment of employees, and it's pretty flat structures. And if you get that right, you can achieve a lot with fewer people. Of course, there's some sort of consensus thing that can slow things down, and you know, sometimes you can avoid that by having the right culture in the company. And I think when you sort of get to the point where you establish a presence here, and you have like a beachhead and a main office, and hopefully the beachhead will grow as it goes, I think that cultural transfer and trusted bridge is a key success factor to make it work. And I think the best way of making sure it's there is to have one of the founders transfer and build a team here around it, because that founder is certainly in a position to make decisions and empower people and bring the culture forward, and also trusted to give the hard messages back. So I don't know that there's a substitute in terms of having a high likelihood of success. You still have the risks of who you hire and so forth, but I think that's clearly the best formula I've seen.
In our company, we have been discussing this a lot, and I think that from our perspective, we have been discussing it from a perspective that is like, in Sweden, we're not working for someone, we're working together with someone. And there is a big difference between the US and Sweden, I think. Goods and bads, but working for instead of working together instead of working for, that is like that's a watchword for us.
Right. Anyone else?
Yes, so the management style, that I can talk 10 hours or more, because it's extremely important to me. The main reason for it is when we started out, we got typical enterprise, US enterprise customers, where you have director, senior director, VP, SVP, CEO, and it's like 15 layers. And we were normally we were dealing at the director level, VP level. And if you do director and manager and above, the life was pretty miserable, I must say, for these people because of this hierarchy. So in our culture, in our company, we try to create a culture where we don't use titles, we don't have managers as such. We spend a lot of time figuring out how can we empower people through transparency and make this our business a purpose-driven mission, so that everyone has their own domain and they make their own decisions. And my goal is to prove that not only Zappos, but other companies like ourselves can go big time in this completely autonomous, decentralized way of dealing with people. And that's what we're trying to do. So whether we're successful or not, Arne might have some thoughts, but it's very important, and I think it's something that is going to be more and more important going forward, because people, someone was mentioning earlier that the new guys, they are much more purpose-driven than the job is there to get cash, but people want to do more in life than just earning cash, and having some ideas about how you actually create a purpose-driven organization from a management perspective is very important.
So I've been running my business here for 17 years, and I just spent a month in Sweden working out of the office there, and took over as president at the office in Sweden as well. And there's definitely a big difference. They think I'm a little bit abrasive and a little bit too direct, which so I feel like our office in here can move quicker. We can make quicker decisions because. And we're still a small team in both offices, but there's definitely a big difference on how they were not always really happy when I came to Sweden and decided to do it my way.
Right. I think Björn's looking sternly at me, and we're standing between you and lunch, which is a very dangerous place to be, I imagine. Are there any last comments from you before we round off?
A short one.
Mm-hmm.
To establish a company here is difficult if you don't have friends or get help. We tried to get help in Norway. We're lucky that we know that man and a few others around here that actually can help us, point us to the right lawyers to set up the company, get the right contracts for licensing, make sure that getting a house and buying a car when you've never been to the States is like you have to have kind of cash and you have to have the driver license. Nothing is easy. And make sure that everything is sorted out so the family can move over and feel that they're coming to a good situation instead of just an empty parking lot and a van that you sleep in. Kind of, I think it should be more focused from different countries in the Nordics how to actually establish a company in the United States or other countries too. Kind of what kind of visa, what kind of help. Can you point us to kind of a relocation agent that can help you getting the house, the furniture, or whatever you need? It's a lot of different things, like, and it's really difficult when you don't know anyone.
I have one thing that I like. I have there's a saying that I really like, and it's the goal is to keep the goal. And I think that's a really important thing when you start a business or if you move over here, to not get sidetracked of what your goal actually was when you came over. I think that's a good one.
Thank you. That's a good one to round off on, I think. But thanks a lot to all of you. Should we give him a hand?